How do I break a job or a task into the basic steps? A job step is defined as a segment of the operation necessary to advance the work. So it's a piece of the job. Once this is done, you can move on to the next step of the job. If you make the steps too large, what happens is you include 2 or 3 steps into one of the steps. And then you don't get that detail where you can link a hazard to a specific step. You might miss certain steps. You might miss certain hazards connected to a step. If you break the steps up too small, then what happens, it's not a complete activity, it's not a complete step, and then you will have 2 or 3 steps that actually describes the same thing, or that's part of the same complete process to deliver something. And then all that happens is you start getting repetitive with your hazards and your controls, because it's all still the same step involving the same hazards and the same controls. Sometimes what happens, if you break up the job, then you find out, but wow, this job contains so many steps. You should ask yourself if this isn't actually 2 tasks that I'm combining, or if the analysis that I'm doing is not a combination of tasks. You might have to then break it up into 2 or 3 parts. An important point to remember when you break up a job into its basic steps is to maintain the correct sequence. Any step that is out of order, you may miss potential hazards, or you can introduce hazards because you are breaking up the sequence and you are exposing a person to a hazard which would have been addressed in the step before or after. When you observe a task, you need to observe every step of the job in sequence. And when you record a job step, every job step needs to start with an action word, an action verb. So the first word must be lift, move, check, read, sweep, clean, whatever the verb is that you are going to require. The process of breaking up a job into steps is usually done by somebody observing or watching a worker doing a job. It can be more than one observer, and it will help if a person doing the job also explains, I'm doing this because of this, I'm doing this because of this. Normally, the observer is the immediate supervisor. Sometimes it's a safety guy. If I involve more than one person in this observation, then my steps observation is most likely to be much better. The best observer to break down the job into smaller parts is a person that is experienced in all parts of the job. It also helps if I tell the person that is being observed why I am observing him, so that he's not suspicious. He doesn't worry, what am I doing, and then maybe change the way in which he does the job, or he does it perfectly according to the procedure, but that's not the way that it's normally done. So be open and honest with the person that you are going to observe and tell him what is happening. We are not doing a job safety analysis to find out where people are taking shortcuts or how we can do the job better. It's not a time and motion study where we are looking for productivity increases. and neither are we observing the individual to find out individual unsafe behaviors or risk-taking behavior. What we want to do is we want the person to do the job like he would normally do it, with the same tools, under the same circumstances, because I cannot improve the task and the safety of the task if I don't know where the risks are. So it doesn't help if somebody pretends that the job is safe, but in the meantime they are hiding certain hazards or certain risks from the observer. I also want to observe the job under normal conditions and at the same time normal operating conditions as a person would normally do it. The only difference from the normal operations that I would like to see is that the only difference between normal operations and a task safety analysis is that the worker is being observed. The rest should stay exactly the same. Now, when this job is completed and my observation is completed, we get together and we discuss the steps with the participants, the worker that I've observed. And I want to make sure that all the basic steps have been listed and I understand them, and I can break them up at the right place, and I understand why they are being performed. This is an example of hand washing. Now, with COVID, we've all had plenty of practice in how to wash hands, and here are 15 steps to do it. You'll see that it's a complete process from the time that you open up the water up to the point where you dry your hands and you hang the towel up on the towel rack. It describes to you how you need to do it step by step, and you can address every facet so that you can wash between your fingers, over your fingers, your thumbs, all of those places. I'm pretty sure some of you have seen those hand washing videos during COVID times. But this is a complete step-by-step process of washing your hands. I will put this link on the internet. I will put this link in as part of the material, and you can go and have a look. This task is pouring a concrete slab, and it's broken down into 8 steps. Site work preparing, placing formwork, mixing the concrete, placing the concrete, doing what they call the early finishing, troweling the concrete, doing the final finishing, and then leaving it to be cured. Let's go and have a look what it looks like. And here we see the steps. Good cautionary notes, clearing the area, placing the formwork, placing all the reinforcing down, mixing the concrete, placing the concrete, doing the early finishing, troweling, final finishing, and leaving it for curing. That is a task, and the task is pouring concrete. This is a typical task safety analysis template. I don't like this template for a variety of reasons, but it contains the most basic information: the task or the job, who was it analyzed by and when. It contains a column for your task steps. You can write down the task steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What we do in every one of these task steps, we identify the hazards that are present and the incidents may occur. We then, in the controls column, we say what the person should be doing to prevent people from getting injured or suffering from ill health. Now, the reasons why I don't like this is because a lot of people still suffer from the confusion between hazards, incidents, and controls. And people are still putting unsafe conditions or at-risk conditions or substandard conditions or at-risk behavior rather than the hazards. Also, hazard identification, because there's nothing that forces people to think exactly what hazards are. It typically results in incorrect or inadequate hazard identification. Also, if there are hazards that are present throughout all of these steps, then you have to repeat that hazard for every one of those steps, and also the controls for every one of those steps. And it becomes very bulky and repetitive. If there are 15 hazards in the area where you are working, not related to the task steps, they are still relevant to the task. But what happens is you now have to repeat all 15 hazards through all 10 or 15 or 20 of your steps. It's not effective as far as I'm concerned, and it's very repetitive. I will show you how to use what I call an enhanced task safety analysis template, along with a tool that is called the SIPOC tool, to make sure that we capture all the steps as well as all the hazards in our task safety analysis.